money doesn't buy happiness. You hear that all the time, right? It sounds wise, maybe even a bit comforting.
It's one of those classic sayings.
But, I mean, let's be real for a second. We all know that having enough money, well, lets you buy food, have a place to live, get health care if you need it, maybe help your family out, do things you enjoy.
Yeah, the basics. Things that feel pretty fundamental to just not being stressed all the time.
Exactly. Things that seem essential for a life that isn't miserable.
So there's this real tension, isn't there? How can money not buy happiness when, well, the lack of it clearly buys a whole lot of misery and anxiety?
That tension is absolutely the core of it. And that's exactly what we want to dig into in this deep dive. We look at a whole range of stuff, research studies, psychology deep dives, even ancient wisdom and, what people are actually talking about online right now.
And the idea is to explore this really complex relationship, money and happiness. What do all these different perspectives tell us about where genuine well-being actually comes from? Especially, once you've got those basic security needs covered.
Yeah, I have a feeling the answer isn't going to be simple. Like, it's not going to fit on a t-shirt.
Definitely not. Because the sources approach it from so many angles. You've got hard economic data, psychological principles, philosophies that are thousands of years old, even entire countries trying different approaches. It gets complicated fast.
Okay, so let's start where it feels most raw for people. That undeniable, foundational role money plays. Providing security, yes, but maybe even more importantly, just removing misery.
Right.
Because if you look at, say, online discussions about this, people push back hard on that money doesn't buy happiness line, especially when they're struggling financially.
Absolutely. Those conversations are a really powerful dose of reality. The main feeling isn't so much that money creates pure joy, but that not having enough money just creates this constant grinding anxiety and suffering. Yeah.
People talk about the worry, can I make rent? What if I get sick? How do I pay for childcare? Someone even mentioned not having enough means they're just constantly scrambling, like they can't even afford the time to enjoy their family.
Ugh, that feeling of being trapped, where even time feels like a luxury you can't afford. That's a really specific kind of misery that money can fix.
It absolutely can. You see comments like, money doesn't buy happiness, but it sure takes the stress off when you have enough for day-to-day stuff. People make that distinction really clearly.
So it's not adding happiness, it's subtracting unhappiness.
Exactly. It's removing the negative emotions, the fear, the stress, the constant feeling of insecurity. It provides that safety net, that safety and independency someone mentioned. Or as another person put it more bluntly, lack of money does buy a shit ton of misery.
Right. Okay, so money gets you to a baseline, a place where you're not constantly fighting just to survive.
Yes, foundation. But then the big question becomes, once you're past that survival point, how much more does money actually help? How much does it add to your well-being? And this is where all that research is trying to put a number on it comes in.
Precisely. And probably the most famous starting point for that discussion was that study from 2010 by Kahneman and Deaton Nobel Prize winner Kahneman.
Right. That was the one everyone talked about.
It was huge. They looked at tons of data, like hundreds of thousands of Americans, and they sort of split well-being into two things. There's emotional well-being, your daily feelings like joy, stress, sadness, and then life evaluation, how you rate your life overall.
Okay.
And what they found, or what became the headline finding, was that while your overall life evaluation kept going up with more income, your day-to-day emotional well-being seemed to plateau. It sort of leveled off around an annual income of $75,000 back then.
And that $75,000 figure just took off, didn't it? It became the number. It really fed that narrative. See, money doesn't buy happiness beyond this point.
It really did. But, science keeps moving. And another researcher, Matthew Killingsworth, came along later with a different way of looking at it.
Okay, how was his approach different?
Well, instead of just surveys asking people to remember how they felt, he used smartphones. He'd ping people throughout the day, asking them to report their feelings and life satisfaction right there in the moment. Real-time data.
Capturing it as it happens. More immediate.
Exactly. Trying to get closer to experienced well-being. And his findings, they actually contradicted that plateau idea. He suggested that both experienced well-being, those daily feelings, and overall life evaluation continue to rise with income, even way past $75,000. Maybe the rate slowed down a bit, but it didn't just stop.
So now you've got two big studies, two respected researchers, with results that seem to point in different directions.
Awkward. a bit. But what happened next is actually really cool for science. Kahneman and Killingsworth, along with another psychologist, Barbara Mellers, decided to team up. They called it an adversarial collaboration.
An adversarial collaboration. Sounds intense.
Right. But the idea was productive. They basically said, okay, let's put our data and our hypotheses together, reanalyze it jointly, and figure out why we got different results. They look at a huge data set, over 33,000 working adults in the U.S.
That's fantastic. So what did this super team find when they crunched the numbers together? What's the updated picture?
Well, the findings, published just last year in 2023, are more nuanced. They kind of reconcile the earlier studies. What they found was that for the majority of people, like maybe 85% of the folks in their study happiness, specifically that day-to-day experienced well-being, actually does keep increasing pretty steadily with income, almost like a straight line going up.
Okay, and how high did that line keep going? What was the income level this time?
Their data showed this upward trend continuing right up to around $500,000 a year.
Whoa, $500,000.
Yeah.
It's way different from $75,000. Even if you adjust the old number for inflation, which puts it maybe around $103,000 today, $500K is a whole different ballpark.
It's a big jump. So the takeaway for most people seems to be that, yeah, more money does tend to correlate with feeling happier day to day up to quite a high income level.
But you said it was nuanced. It wasn't the same story for everyone in that 85%.
Not quite everyone. They found some interesting patterns within that group. For about 30% of the people in the study, the ones who were already reporting being pretty happy to begin with their happiness actually seemed to accelerate its rise once their income got above $100,000.
Accelerate. So if you're already a generally happy person, getting richer might make you even happier faster.
That's what the data seem to suggest for that particular group. It's like having more resources opens up possibilities or removes constraints in a way that really boosts their existing well-being.
Interesting. But what about the other end? People who aren't generally happy.
Right. They also looked at the least happy group, about 15% of their sample. For these individuals who reported being generally unhappy, earning more money seemed to make very little difference to their well-being once they hit about $100,000.
So for people who are already miserable, just throwing more money at the situation doesn't really help much beyond that 100,000 mark.
Pretty much. The researchers basically concluded that for this group, their unhappiness is likely driven by other things money just can't fix. Killingsworth put it very directly. If you're rich and miserable, more money won't help.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You're talking about deeper issues, maybe grief, heartbreak, clinical depression, chronic illness, really broken relationships. Those need different solutions than just a bigger paycheck.
Totally. Money can remove the stress of making ends meet.
Yeah.
But it can't mend a broken heart or cure depression. What about the limits of this new $500,000 finding itself? Are there caveats?
Oh, absolutely. A big one is that they didn't have a ton of data for people earning above $500,000. It gets pretty sparse up there. So while the trend looked linear up to that point, they couldn't really say for sure what happens after that. Does it finally plateau? Does it keep going? We don't really know from this study.
Okay, so the jury's still out on the billionaires.
Pretty much. And of course, like most studies like this, it shows a strong correlation that higher income goes with higher reported happiness for most. But proving direct causation that the money itself is causing the happiness is really tricky. There could be other factors linked to high income, like maybe better health or more autonomy, that are actually driving the well-being.
And it all relies on people self-reporting how happy they feel, which is always a bit subjective, right? How you feel today might be different from tomorrow.
Exactly. It's complex to measure accurately.
And thinking about the real world again, those online discussions really hammered home how these big national average numbers like 75K or 103K or even $500K feel completely different depending on where you actually live.
Oh, massively. The cost of living is a huge factor that these studies often average out. People were pointing out, $75,000 or even $100,000 in a small town where housing is cheap feels totally different than the same amount in New York City or San Francisco.
Yeah, I saw one comment from someone earning 100K in Manhattan saying their apartment was so bad they wouldn't even want guests over.
Wow. Yeah. And another person earning $400K said they felt like they were living paycheck to paycheck because of a huge mortgage, property taxes, childcare in a really expensive city.
400 grand and feeling paycheck to paycheck. That really puts it in perspective.
It does. It highlights that while the studies give us these broad trends, The feeling of having enough money to not be stressed is incredibly personal and depends so much on your circumstances, your debts, your location. Even with a high income, if your expenses are also sky high, you can still feel precarious, and that definitely undermines well-being.
Okay, so let's pull this first part together. Money is vital for getting out of misery, for basic security. Check. For most people, more money does seem to correlate with more happiness, maybe up to a pretty high level like $500K, especially if you're already a relatively happy person.
Right.
But there are diminishing returns eventually, even in the latest research. And for some people who are deeply unhappy for other reasons, money stops helping much sooner.
That seems to be the picture.
So that leads us right into the next big question. If even $500,000 doesn't guarantee peak happiness for everyone, and there are diminishing returns, why isn't unlimited money the key? What happens beyond that threshold? Or why does the effect weaken?
This is where we shift gears a bit. We've established money is great for removing the bad stuff, the suffering, the stress. But its power to actively add lasting positive happiness seems limited. Even that $500 case study hints the rate of increase slows. It's not infinite. This gets us into the whole idea of diminishing returns on happiness.
Right, like you said, the 10th slice pizza isn't as good as the first.
Exactly. Or, the fifth sports car doesn't give you the same thrill as the first one you bought after saving up for years. That initial buzz from getting something new or hitting a new income level, it's real, but it fades. And this ties directly into a really important psychological idea, the hedonic treadmill.
Ah, yes, the hedonic treadmill, or hedonic adaptation, the idea that we just get used to stuff.
Precisely. Several sources mention this. It's this tendency humans have to adapt pretty quickly to new circumstances, both good and bad, but especially the good stuff, like more money or new possessions. That initial happiness boost you get, it wears off, and your overall happiness level tends to drift back to your personal baseline.
So to feel that same level of excitement again, you need more. A bigger raise, a fancier car, a bigger house.
You got it. It's like you're running on a treadmill. You put in the effort, earn more money, but your actual position, your baseline happiness, doesn't necessarily change much in the long run from that effort alone because the baseline itself adjusts upward. The new luxury just becomes the new normal.
You just keep running faster to stay in the same place, happiness-wise.
That's the concept. And one thinker, Avner Offer, argues that modern affluence, having lots of wealth and chores, actually makes this treadmill effect worse and creates its own problems.
Yeah.
He has this really striking idea. Affluence breeds impatience, and impatience undermines well-being.
Affluence breeds impatience. How does having more stuff make you less patient? That seems counterintuitive.
Offer's argument is that when you live in a society with so much abundance, so much choice, and such easy, fast access to goods and services, it creates this constant temptation to go for the immediate reward. Why wait? Why save? Why delay gratification when you can just buy it or experience it right now?
Okay. So it weakens our patience muscle, maybe.
Kind of. It leads to what psychologists call time-inconsistent choices, or myopic behavior. Basically, focusing on the short-term pleasure, even if it hurts your long-term well-being.
Like, instead of saving consistently for retirement, you blow the money on impulse buys because it feels good now, or ordering expensive takeout instead of cooking a healthy meal because it's faster and easier.
Exactly, those kinds of things. Offer argues that this constant availability of immediate gratification actually undermines the skills and virtues associated with patience, planning, and self-control, things that are really crucial for long-term well-being. It can lead to what he calls self-defeating choices. He points to things like rising obesity rates in wealthy countries. We have more information than ever about healthy living, more access to healthy food options, gyms, whatever. But the easy availability and marketing of cheap, high-calorie, instantly gratifying food, combined with this culture of impatience, leads many people to make choices that are bad for their long-term health. It's a paradox.
More resources, but maybe less ability to make the wise long-term choice because the short-term temptation is so strong and easy to satisfy.
That's the core of his argument. Affluence doesn't automatically lead to better decisions. It can create these subtle, new challenges to our self-control and foresight.
That's a really thought-provoking point. And it connects to our own internal stuff too, right? Our relationship with money itself. One of the sources talked about the psychology of money, like our hidden beliefs.
It did, yeah. And this is super important because it helps explain why we might get caught on that treadmill or make those impatient choices. The idea is that the meaning we attach to money is often way more powerful than the actual amount we have.
Meaning, like what money represents to us.
Exactly. We develop these unconscious beliefs about money, often starting way back in childhood, Based on how we saw our parents handle it, what we heard people say about it, they're called money scripts.
Money scripts, okay. And these scripts run in the background, guiding how we act with money without us even realizing it.
Pretty much, they're like hidden operating instructions.
Hmm.
The source highlighted 4 common types.
Okay.
First, money avoidance. You might subconsciously believe money is bad, or rich people are inherently greedy, or maybe that you don't deserve money. This can lead you to sabotage your finances, maybe underspending even when you can afford things, or just avoiding looking at your bills altogether.
Okay, what else?
Second, money status. This is where your self-worth gets totally tied up with your net worth or your income. If this is your script, you might feel like you constantly need to earn more to feel good about yourself, always comparing yourself to others, maybe spending way too much on status symbols, the fancy car, the designer labels, often going into debt, just to project an image of success and feel enough.
Right, keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
But driven by an internal script.
Exactly. Third is money worship. This is the classic money will solve everything belief. You're convinced that if you just had more money, all your problems would disappear, you'd be happy, your relationships would be perfect, your health would improve. So you chase money relentlessly, maybe sacrificing your health, your relationships, your present happiness, thinking it'll pay off later.
And then it often doesn't deliver what was promised.
Right, which just fuels that hedonic treadmill again. You reach the goal, it doesn't fix everything, so you think, I just need more. And the last one is money vigilance. This script is about being really careful, watchful, maybe even secretive with money. Now, this can be good. It can lead to saving and being frugal, but it can also turn into excessive anxiety about money, a real reluctance to spend money even on things that would bring joy or help others, and it can strain relationships if you're too secretive or seen as stingy.
Wow. So depending on your script, you could be sabotaging yourself, chasing status endlessly, worshiping a false idol, or being overly anxious.
Precisely. And you can see how these scripts interact with affluence and the treadmill. If your script is money worship, you're primed to run on that treadmill forever, chasing something external that can't deliver internal peace. If it's money status, you're trapped in comparisons fueled by affluence.
And money itself can symbolize different things, right? Like security or freedom or power.
Absolutely. But if you're trying to use money to fill a deeper psychological need, maybe you crave security because of some underlying anxiety that money can't actually cure, or you seek power through wealth because you have low self-esteem, then just getting more money might become a kind of compensatory behavior. It doesn't address the root issue.
So understanding our own story about money, our personal script, is crucial. It dictates whether we use money in a way that actually supports our well-being or not.
Exactly. It's not just about the number in the bank account. It's about the narrative in our heads.
Okay, this is making so much sense. If money hits diminishing returns, if being wealthy creates its own challenges like impatience, and if our hidden beliefs about money can mess things up, where else should we be looking? What did the sources point to as the real drivers of happiness beyond just having enough cash?
This is where the conversation gets really interesting, I think, because the sources offer some powerful answers that shift the focus completely away from just money. One simple but really practical finding comes from that study looking at how we spend our money.
The one comparing buying stuff versus buying experiences.
That's the one. The research consistently found that spending money on experiences, things like travel, concerts, learning a new skill, even a nice meal out with friends, tends to lead to more immediate and often more lasting happiness than spending the same amount on material possessions.
Even if the cost is the same, like a $500 trip versus a $500 gadget.
Yeah, even controlling for the cost. And there are a few reasons why this might be the case. Experiences often can't be compared as easily or as negatively as possessions. Like, your vacation story is unique, but your phone might be instantly compared to someone else's newer model.
Right. Less keeping up with the Joneses with experiences.
And experiences live on in our memories. They become part of our life story, things we can reminisce about, and sometimes their value even seems to increase over time as we look back fondly. That new gadget feels great at first, but the novelty wears off, it might break or become obsolete. But the memory of that amazing trip or that incredible concert, that often stays with you and keeps contributing to your happiness.
That totally tracks. I mean, you think about stuff you bought 5 years ago versus trips you took 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Which one do you still talk about or smile thinking about? Usually the trip, right?
For most people, yes. It's that enduring positive memory, the story you get to share, how it shapes who you are, that often gives experiences a real edge over just accumulating more stuff.
So that's one key thing. Prioritize spending on doing things over having things.
Hmm.
What else came up as a major source of happiness?
Okay, so this leads us to what might be the single most powerful finding across all the sources we looked at. It comes from one of the longest-running studies of adult life ever done, the Harvard Study of Adult Development.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one. They followed people for
Decades, right?
over 80 years. They've tracked the lives of the same group of men since they were teenagers back in the late 1930s, looking at their health, their work, their relationships, their overall well-being year after year.
80 years, that's just an incredible amount of data on human lives.
Right.
What was the main takeaway after all that time?
It's actually remarkably clear and consistent. The single strongest predictor of who ended up happy, healthy, and living longer wasn't their cholesterol levels at age 50, it wasn't their wealth, it wasn't their career success, it wasn't even their IQ. It was the quality of their interpersonal connection.
Wow, really, just
There we go.
relationships. Yes. Close relationships with partners, family, friends, and also feeling connected to a broader community. The warmth, the reliability, the depth of those connections mattered more than anything else for long-term well-being.
That's kind of profound, isn't it? Especially in a world that often seems obsessed with individual achievement and accumulating wealth. After 80 years, the answer boils down to, who are you close to?
It's a powerful counter-narrative. But then where does something like purpose fit in? Because we often hear about finding purpose being important too.
Yeah, good question. How does purpose relate to connections?
Well, one perspective from Psychology Today made a really interesting link. It basically acknowledged the Harvard finding connections are paramount, but suggested that focusing on little p purpose is a key way to build those connections.
Little p purpose, what does that mean?
It means focusing less on some grand, abstract, maybe overwhelming life mission, and more on the process-oriented stuff, the activities that genuinely excite you, that you find meaningful and engaging day to day, your passions, your hobbies, the things that light you up.
Okay, so pursuing things you enjoy, how does that lead to connections?
Because when you actively engage in something you're passionate about, it naturally draws other people to you who share that interest. It creates opportunities for connection.
Ah, I see. Like if you love playing music.
Exactly. You join a band, you go to open mic nights, you talk to other musicians. If you love gardening, you join a community garden, you chat with your neighbors over the fence, you join a club. If you're passionate about coding, you get involved in online communities, go to meetups, maybe collaborate on a project. If you love volunteering for a cause, you meet other volunteers and the people you're helping.
So your passions become these natural hubs for finding your people.
That's the idea. Pursuing your little p purpose isn't just for personal satisfaction. It's a powerful engine for creating the very social connections and community ties that the Harvard study found are so critical for long-term happiness. Purpose fuels connection.
That's a really elegant link between the two. It's not just about finding what you love, but recognizing it also helps you find who you connect with. This paints a much richer picture. What about digging even further back? Did any of the sources offer insights from, say, older traditions or philosophies?
Yes, the Buddhist perspective came up, and it offers a really profound, ancient challenge to this whole idea that external wealth is the path to happiness.
How so?
At its heart, Buddhist philosophy teaches that suffering dukkha, this sort of fundamental unsatisfactoriness, is just part of life. And it arises mainly from attachment, or tanha, which means craving, clinging, grasping onto things that are impermanent.
And material wealth, possessions, status,
Yeah,
those are definitely seen as impermanent.
absolutely. Everything that's conditioned, everything that arises and passes away is seen as transient. So trying to find lasting happiness by accumulating more stuff or chasing fleeting pleasures or holding on to a certain status, it's seen as fundamentally flawed because those things can't provide lasting satisfaction. They're always changing, and eventually you lose them.
That sounds remarkably similar to the hedonic treadmill idea we were just talking about.
It really does, doesn't it? Both modern psychology and ancient Buddhism seem to agree. Chasing external gains gives you maybe a temporary high, but it can't deliver deep, enduring fulfillment if your inner state doesn't change. You just adapt and want more.
So Buddhism basically described hedonic adaptation thousands of years ago. Wild.
In its own way, yes. So the Buddhist path to genuine well-being, to liberation from that cycle of suffering, and ultimately to a state of peace or nibbana, it's primarily an inward path.
Focused on the mind.
Right. It involves cultivating inner peace through things like ethical conduct, mental discipline, which includes practices like mindfulness and meditation, and developing wisdom, which means understanding the true nature of things, especially impermanence and the idea of non-self.
Okay, what about detachment? That's a word often associated with Buddhism. Does it mean you have to give up everything, like become a monk in a cave?
Not necessarily, although that's one expression of the path. For most people, detachment, or vairagya, is more about a shift in your relationship to things. It's about recognizing the impermanence of possessions, status, even experiences, and loosening your mental grip on them.
So not defining yourself by what you own or pinning all your hopes for happiness on external things.
Exactly. It's about cultivating an inner sense of contentment and freedom that isn't totally dependent on whether things outside of you are going perfectly according to your desires, because they rarely do, right? It's about finding a source of well-being within rather than constantly seeking it outside.
And how do things like compassion fit in?
Oh, compassion, karuna, and loving kindness, metta, are absolutely central. They aren't just seen as nice ethical ideals. They're considered powerful practices for developing well-being. When you genuinely cultivate empathy for others' suffering and goodwill towards all beings, it naturally starts to erode your own self-centered craving and clinging.
Because you're focused outward on others.
Right. And it fosters this deep sense of interconnectedness. Acting selflessly, helping others, building harmonious relationships. These actions bring a profound, non-material kind of fulfillment, which, interestingly, loops right back to the Harvard study's findings about the crucial importance of connection and relationships.
It really does seem like these different perspectives, modern research, ancient wisdom, are pointing towards similar things: connection, purpose, inner state.
It's fascinating how they converge. Buddhism offers this comprehensive framework for training the mind, cultivating qualities like mindfulness, simplicity, questioning needs versus wants, gratitude for the present, compassion, all as active practices leading towards a more stable, resilient kind of happiness that isn't just chasing the next external fix.
And that ultimate goal, nibbana, isn't just feeling happy, but something more profound.
It's described more as the complete cessation of suffering, and its root cause is that craving, aversion, and fundamental misunderstanding of reality. It's a kind of peace that transcends ordinary, fleeting pleasures.
It's really powerful to see these ancient ideas resonate so strongly with modern findings. It's such a different way of thinking about progress and success compared to just looking at, say, economic growth. Are there any examples of, like, a whole country trying to put these broader ideas of well-being into practice?
Yes, absolutely. The Kingdom of Bhutan is probably the most famous example. They champion the concept of gross national happiness, or GNH.
Right, GNH instead of GDP.
Exactly. The idea came from their fourth king back in the 1970s. He basically declared that gross national happiness is more important than gross domestic product. The core philosophy is that development needs to be holistic. It has to give equal importance to material well-being and non-material aspects like spiritual, social, and environmental health.
And they actually try to measure this GNH, don't they? How does that work?
They do. They developed a really comprehensive GNH index. It's
Yeah.
not just about income. It measures progress across 9 different domains.
9, what are they?
Okay, let's see. They include psychological well-being, health, time use, education, cultural diversity and resilience, good governance, community vitality, ecological diversity and resilience, and finally, living standards, which is where the economic part fits in.
Wow. So they're literally measuring things like people's mental health, how much free time they have, how connected they feel to their community and culture, the health of the environment, how good their government is, alongside the usual suspects like health, education, and income.
Precisely. Within those 9 domains, they have 33 specific indicators. They assess whether people have achieved sufficiency, like a good enough level across these different conditions for happiness. To be officially considered happy by their index, you need to have sufficiency in something like 2/3 of the indicators. It's a national commitment to saying human flourishing is way more than just economics.
And does this index actually influence how the country is run? Is it used for policy?
Apparently, yes. It's not just a report that sits on a shelf. They use the GNH index to guide their national planning. It helps them identify where well-being might be lagging. Maybe scores are low in community vitality in a certain region, or psychological well-being needs attention nationally.
So they can then target policies and resources to those specific areas.
That's the goal. It helps them track progress over time and try to make sure that big development projects or new laws align with this broader vision of increasing overall happiness, not just boosting the economy. And apparently, their 2022 index showed significant improvements in overall well-being compared to their first one back in 2010, suggesting that focusing on these factors can actually lead to positive change.
That's a fascinating real-world experiment. A country actively tracked to prioritize well-being in a holistic way, reflecting many of these non-money factors we've been discussing.
It really provides a concrete alternative to the default assumption in so many places that just growing the GDP is the main goal of society.
Okay, let's try and wrap our heads around all of this. We started with that very real pain caused by not having enough money. We looked at the research trying to figure out how much money helps, maybe up to quite a high level for most, but definitely with diminishing returns and less help for those unhappy for other reasons.
Right.
Then we got into the psychological side of the hedonic treadmill, how affluence itself can create challenges like impatience, and how our own hidden beliefs about money shape everything.
The internal landscape.
And then we shifted to the things that seem to matter even more, especially beyond basic security. Spending on experiences, the absolute critical importance of relationships and connection, like, number one, according to that huge Harvard study, finding purpose that actually helps build those connections, cultivating inner states like mindfulness and gratitude, and even seeing how a whole nation tries to prioritize this stuff.
It's been quite a journey through these different angles. And I think the picture that really emerges is that happiness. Well, it's not one thing. You don't just achieve it by getting enough money or finding the perfect job or any single thing. It's this complex state that comes from a blend of different factors working together.
So what are the key ingredients in that blend, drawing it all together?
Based on everything we've touched on, it looks like the recipe for genuine well-being needs several things. First, yes, enough material security to cover your basic needs and get you out of that constant financial stress zone. Money is crucial up to that point.
Okay, baseline security, got it.
Second, strong, warm, reliable interpersonal connections. Close relationships, community belonging. This just kept coming up as maybe the most vital piece.
Connections, number two, or maybe number one.
Third, engaging in activities that feel purposeful to you, that align with your values, and importantly, often serve as the way you build and deepen those connections.
Purpose that fuels connection.
Right. Fourth, cultivating your inner world. Things like mindfulness, being content with what you have, practicing gratitude, reducing that desperate clinging to external things, understanding that adaptation treadmill.
The inner game, super important.
Fifth, consciously choosing to use your resources, time, energy, money on experiences that enrich your life and create lasting memories rather than just piling up more stuff.
Experiences over things.
And maybe sixth, ideally, living in a society or community that actually values and supports these non-economic parts of life, like we saw with the Bhutan example.
That makes sense. A supportive environment helps. So money. It ends up looking like a really powerful tool, doesn't it?
Exactly. A vital tool. It can buy security, which is huge. It can enable amazing experiences. It can free up time and resources to pursue your purpose or build community. It can even help you get support for deeper psychological or health issues. But it's the tool, not the ultimate source of happiness itself.
And its real impact depends so much on our psychology around it, those money scripts, and crucially, how we choose to use it, alongside these other really fundamental human needs for connection, purpose, and inner peace.
You nailed it. It's deeply intertwined, how we relate to it, how we use it.
So at the end of the day, it seems like real, sustainable happiness requires us to work on both fronts, tending to our external world, making sure we have enough security, building our communities, and also tending to our internal world, our mindset, our gratitude, our beliefs, cultivating things like compassion.
It really points towards a holistic view of flourishing. The money part is foundational, absolutely essential up to a point, but it's just not the whole story, not even close.
Well, this deep dive has definitely made that old saying, money doesn't buy happiness, feel a lot more textured. It's kind of true, but the why it's true and the what does bring happiness instead. That's where all the richness lies.
Money removes misery, but well-being seems to blossom from this mix of security, deep connection, meaningful engagement, and that cultivated inner state.
Understanding that difference feels like a really important first step if you want to be more intentional about finding happiness in your own life.
Absolutely.
So, thinking about all this, if that 80-year Harvard study points to the strength of our relationships as the biggest predictor of a happy life, and we know that pursuing our passions, our little p purpose, is a great way to build those connections, here's a thought to leave you with. What's one small step you could take this week, starting today maybe, to invest just a little more deeply in the people or the pursuits that truly light you up? regardless of what your bank balance looks like right now.
Definitely something worth pondering.
Until next time, keep digging deeper.